I'm really, really excited for this next session, continuing with the theme of AI that we started this morning. We are going to be welcoming, thank you to our incredible partners, ASU, a fireside chat about braiding knowledge and intelligence. And this session will promise to redefine design through AI. So I'm really, really excited to welcome Paola Sanguinetti, Director of Professor at the Design School at ASU, to moderate this fascinating fireside chat.
This conversation, actually, that I'm having with Jaideep, we started last semester when I was visiting a series of universities here in India, kind of sharing what we're doing at the Design School at ASU with AI. And what I'm going to share with you are actually 4 examples of the way we are integrating AI in our programs through content creation, research, and products, designing new products. And just to give you some context, like everyone else, when this thing kind of exploded with AI about a year ago, we had a lot of conversations about how we would use it in the school. So we conducted a series of workshops, and we last semester just had monthly workshops for all the faculty to redesign our workflows and how we integrate AI in the classroom. So that was kind of the ground level that we did so that we would really embrace it and try to explore how we could use it in design. So I'm sharing 4 of the ways, 4 of the projects, some of them are ongoing, of the result of these discussions and workshops. And I think what I want to talk about is we are using the existing tools, but I really want to talk about the future of tools and how to support designers. So anyone in the audience who wants to talk to us about that, I'm really looking forward to this. And I want to share with you that the way that we are using the tools in a way that really aligns with our mission at ASU of inclusion is the way in which we ask questions of the current generative AI tools and other AI tools and platforms that our faculty are using in research. So I'll start with these 4 questions that our faculty in design, in architecture, in interior design, and in graphic design are doing. The first one is, how do we create a sense of place, including people and situations and backgrounds? So how do we shift the design process instead of thinking about from a large concept top down to really starting at the grassroots level? How do we learn from the past to imagine the future of cities? Is there a code in the way in which designers work that we can learn from to begin to imagine new futures? And how do we deepen our understanding of indigenous cultures? And this is obviously in Arizona, we have 21, the largest number of indigenous populations and tribes, and we have faculty that are leading research and working with those communities. This is just one example of the way we want to think about the perspectives and the voices of those who haven't been at the table when we're thinking about this kind of technology. And then from the student perspective, how do we redefine inclusive learning? So I'll show you these 4 examples. In the first one are how we're integrating it in the classroom. So we all know that we can use generative AI to imagine and to create new fantastical images through prompting. So what we actually focused on was really the prompt side. How do you utilize the prompt as a storytelling technique that would begin to think about the perspective of populations in the city that are underserved? And here I'm showing an example of some of the product of the student work where students are thinking about homeless populations and how do we include in the fabric of the city, the cities of the future, spaces for those populations. How do we think about housing and affordable housing without giving up the kind of amenities that we all aspire to to thrive? How do we integrate or consider populations, for example, those who are suffering from substance abuse and the kinds of spaces where we celebrate that they're trying to get healthy, that they're trying to find a better life, rather than sort of tucking those spaces away in the city. How do we think about refugees and people that have come a long way to our place to, again, find a better life? And what's interesting with this technique is that students were able to use many, many stories, capture them, and through prompting, begin to imagine a diversity of spaces in the city. And the kind of work that was generated in the space of 2 weeks by the faculty's account would have taken the whole semester. And I'm just showing some images of the multiplicity of results that were generated at the beginning of the concept design process that then was really the grounding for the entire semester. The second project is actually a 2-week project where one of our faculty members asked the students to imagine the future of the city of Chicago by looking at the work of Louis Sullivan at the earliest 20th century. He is one of the fathers of skyscrapers, a designer that integrated in the design of skyscrapers these sculptural reliefs to try to connect the city inhabitants with nature. So the first question is, what would that kind of connection look like in the future? And the students created their own sculptural reliefs that could be utilized to really highlight spaces in a building, the entrance, the structure, the roofs, etc. But they also look more deeply at the question of what does that integration with nature look like? And they began to imagine these new kinds of building typologies in which nature and the built environment will be connected to create spaces for the city inhabitants. Also thinking about public spaces. So those are ways in which we are using it as it is right now in the classroom. The other project that I want to share with you is actually a research project. We have one of our faculty members, Wanda de la Costa. She's the first licensed architect, woman architect from an indigenous population in Canada. And she's helping us start a new program in indigenous placekeeping and design. Her whole career has been working with indigenous communities to try to represent and create spaces for those communities that avoid the kind of stereotypical design that is often found when you're trying to create spaces for indigenous communities. And the way that she begins her process is through what she calls deep listening. And this is an example of the way in which she works with indigenous communities, bringing them to the site, understanding that for indigenous communities, the connection to place, the connection to the land is very important. The relationship to nature, to animals, to flora is an extension of being a family. And she says that 90% of her work is listening and capturing through storytelling really the values of that community. So she's trying to explore how you can use AI to codify and to begin to capture all of this knowledge that is shared through storytelling. She's developed her own process of design that begins with what she calls the indigenous startup, this meeting where you're starting to build trust with the community, to listen to their stories, and continue this process of storytelling and co-design that then is shared ultimately, again, through a series of narratives, images, etc. So what she's trying to do right now is all of this work that she's been doing is a repository of notes and using an AI to not only capture all that information, but also to begin to, once you're listening to new stories, begin to organize them and codify them through these different ways of knowing. And she's using as a reference a project that she was also involved in with the UNESCO that was designed to kind of map the cultural heritage that is being lost in the world. And this is an image, and I put a code for you all to check it out. There was an awesome video that I'm not showing you, but it's an interactive tool that enables you to not only place your cursor in a part of the world, but connect through that location different aspects of culture, whether it's music, food, and how those elements connect you to other cultures. Again, this project is trying to capture what is actually disappearing in the cultural heritage of the world. What Wanda is focusing on is how to do the same kind of approach, but to capture the cultural heritage of indigenous populations in North America. And this is an ongoing project in which she's using a tool called Monkey Learn to begin to capture all of the work that she's already done, and then again, help her with the projects that she's doing in the future. And lastly, I want to show you an example of one of our students. She just graduated, a graphic designer, and her thesis project was a tool to help students that have dyslexia. And for Claire, this is a very personal project because she herself has dyslexia. And so she helped me put these slides together, kind of showing and sharing what the experience is for someone who has dyslexia when they're faced with learning, right? What she shared here, the kinds of things that happen, the difficulty can be expressed through poor spelling, difficulty remembering, mixing terms, and just kind of, she called it, kind of being frozen. It's very debilitating. She also shared with me things that I didn't know, that there are many degrees and levels of dyslexia. And so the tool that she designed would be one that would assist someone that has this condition. And I asked her, well, what would that look like? And she said, well, you know, from her graphic design perspective, it could be as simple as the tool is able to immediately regenerate the content, reformat it, so it's easily digestible for the student. She said for her, that's what would work, but maybe for someone else, it would be to actually have visible on the screen certain chunks of content that then could show up, and then a new chunk would show up based on, again, customized for the person with the condition. What's interesting with her approach as a designer is that she's doing it through a user journey. So the way in which the tool is designed is not only helps you solve the specific condition, but as from the child's perspective, because she, again, is all very personal to her. When a learner is starting to experience difficulties, the tool would be able to create certain tests to begin to identify what is exactly the condition of the student. And then would begin to implement solutions to assist the student through their learning journey to ultimately lead to these kind of positive learning opportunities and outcomes. So again, I've shared with you very, very quickly some examples of what we're doing in design, using what's already available, exploring the future of what we can do with these tools, and also empowering our students to be designer of new tools, of new solutions. And where we see that we are right now, if we think about these three blocks as kind of horizons for AI, we know that what we're using right now are tools that are tapping into what's available already on the web, right? We're making all of this data readily available to us and utilizing it to solve problems. We're in this kind of first horizon. We're also exploring the next horizon, where we're looking at domain knowledge. And for us, design is our domain knowledge. But an example with Wanda, an area of expertise that she's built over time, how to then create her own repository and utilize AI to assist her in her work. How we can use it from the experience of a student to design a new tool to help, based on their own experience, how to help others that have similar issues. And we see this as the next horizon, in which we can look at many repositories, many areas of expertise from education, design, architecture, graphic design, and really explore what we can do, focusing on that repository. And then the last, I think, horizon that many of us are sort of wondering about is this kind of general intelligence of the AI, when we can begin to have these co-creation conversations beyond what we're able to do now, knowing that this tool is really assisting us in expanding our creative processes. The kinds of enablement that we are interested in are generative research, decision-making, which for designers is a key part of our design process, and of course, we're from ASU, innovation. Ultimately, what we see, and the reason I think we've embraced the tool, is that we are very grounded in our values. We know, and the example I've shared with you today, the examples I've shared with you are how our faculty, our students, are asking questions that remain centered on justice, ecology, health, and peace. And so that's why I have a positive outlook on what we can do with these tools, but there's a lot that we can do next. So that's kind of the setting for our conversation, and I'm hand it off to Jaideep.
I'm just going to take 2 minutes and follow up on what Paola was saying. The big challenge and I think that Paola outlined is how AI is going to change the role of the designer, I think, right? So I want to take 1 minute and talk about that. The thing that's happened is, if one looks at the question of design, of architecture, all of that over the last 200 years or so, both design and architecture have essentially, there are two ways in which knowledge has been understood in these fields. The first one is what's called cognitive forms of knowledge and knowing. And the second one is called embodied forms of knowledge, knowing. The difference between these two is very simple. Cognitive forms of knowledge are essentially the kind of knowledge that is, and this is a little complicated, it is never dependent on experience, but valid for all future experiences, right? This is interesting. So for example, the statement that the sun rises in the east is not dependent on anyone's experience here, but it is valid for all our future experiences. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is what's called a cognitive form of knowledge or intelligence. Whereas embodied intelligence or knowledge is essentially the kind of knowledge that is very much dependent on experience, right? It's very much dependent. And designers actually work a lot with that, right? We work a lot with that. But very interestingly, for the last 100, 150 years or so, in design, actually cognitive knowledge was getting valued, right? But I think that's what has happened with AI, Paola, if I can come on to that, is that it has essentially captured the market so much to say on cognitive knowledges, right? Which leaves, I think, two very interesting areas for design to work on, which I think it has given up. And I think this is where I think whether one is thinking of technologies of the future and those of us who are designing technologies of the future which can help design, is the question of, one, problem formulation, not so much solving, but problem formulation. How do you delimit a problem? This, I think, is one of the most important areas where design will go in the future, right? I'm going to take a minute and ask all of you a question. So imagine that you are here and you've got a flat tire. What is the problem that needs to be solved there? Can anybody give me an answer to that? So here's the thing, right? You have a flat tire. What is the problem that needs solving? Sorry? You're attending the car. You're stuck outside. You realize you stepped out. You come in a car. Your car is a flat tire. What's the problem that needs solving? Sorry? Is that the problem that needs solving? Flat tire needs fixing. So what's the problem really, Holly? What's the problem that needs fixing? Solving? Do you think you're going to fix? See, this is what's very interesting. He's given the typical answer. He's actually given the answer, which is solving the problem of knowledge how to fix a tire. You don't need that. What you need to know is which is the nearest place you can go and get the tire fixed. Do you see what I'm saying? These are two very different ways to formulate the problem. One, what we human beings do, and it's very interesting, we all take up what is typically a research problem, and we think that's the one. But a research problem is actually a gap in knowledge. Not very important right now. Those are for the scientists to take up. What we really need in our everyday lives is actually what's called a formulation of a practical problem to be solved, which is, where's the nearest puncture shop in this place? That's different from the problem of, I need to fix the tire. You don't need to fix the tire. You just need to know where's the nearest place to take it, right? So I think this idea of problem formulation, not so much solving, I think is what is going to become very, very important. And I'd like to see where AI can take us with this, right? That's one important challenge. And I think the second important challenge, and this is where I think design is going into, and I think it's going to become very interesting for designers, is the translation of all the kind of cognitive outputs that that AI can give. For example, when I was looking at some of the sheets that Paola was showing us, so let's say you use AI to generate results over multitude of data that is there, right? But how do you translate that data into the everyday? This, I think, is going to become an interesting role for design. And personally, for those who are looking at AI, I'd like to see, and we are thinking of how can this translation, so two problems, problem solving, problem formulation, and second, the question of translation of something into the local. Both these places are actually where embodied knowledge comes most into being. And I think that is an area in which we, I think, is the future of design. And I think it's very interesting. I think AI needs to go there. I think it has not gone there as yet. I think what's happened is that AI, and that's how it is constantly defining intelligence, is that it is talking about it more as a kind of a cognitive sense, not in an embodied sense. That's an interesting, so I don't know, I'd like to stop right there.
We should.
Thank you all.